Hi there, welcome back to Haunting Vales. Tonight, we follow Poirot into a case that begins with something simple, yet sinister. A crimson scarf, lying carelessly at the scene, soaked in more than just color. It holds a secret. To the untrained eye, it's just a piece of cloth. But to Poirot, every thread whispers a hidden truth. Who left it behind? Was it an accident or a deliberate clue meant to mislead? As the puzzle unravels, suspicion deepens, and what starts as a forgotten scarf soon becomes the key to a chilling mystery. This is the puzzle of the Crimson Scarf, a Hercule Poirot mystery. And before we dive deeper into the shadows, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because more mysteries await, only here on Haunting Vales. Chapter 1. The Crimson Arrival. The rain fell in fine, misty threads over London. That particular September evening, when Hercule Poirot found himself summoned to a most curious affair. He was not unused to mystery, of course. Indeed, the little Belgian had carved his reputation in the annals of crime as one who observed the smallest details and arranged them with the neatness of an artist. Yet, as he would later remark with a touch of irony, even the great Poirot could not have foreseen how a single scarf, red, torn, and stained, would come to dictate the course of his next investigation. The letter had arrived that morning, delivered by hand, in handwriting of careful elegance. It bore the crest of Sir Alistair Wemberly, a man of distinguished name and even more distinguished fortune. The invitation was brief. Monsieur Poirot, your presence is urgently requested at Wemberly House. A matter most grave and delicate requires the precision of your celebrated little gray cells. Please, I beg you, make haste. Poirot, sipping his chocolate in the quiet of his Whitehaven flat, frowned delicately at the page. Mon ami Hastings, he murmured to his old friend, who happened to be visiting, this is not the language of a man asking for a trifling favor. Non, there's in these words an urgency, a desperation. Hastings leaned back, ever the picture of British common sense. Dash it all, Poirot, perhaps the fellow has misplaced his family jewels. You've dealt with that before, haven't you? A bit like in The Adventure of the Egyptian Tomb, or when you solved the jewel robbery at the Grand Metropolitan. Poirot smiled thinly. Always you jump to conclusions, mon cher. But let us not judge before we see. We must go immediately. And so, beneath a veil of rain and the shuddering wheels of a cab, Poirot and Hastings were carried across the city toward the great house of Wemberly. Wemberly House was a mansion of age and gravitas. Its stones bore the soot of centuries. Its windows glowed faintly behind drawn curtains, and its iron gates swung inward with reluctant groans. As the cab pulled away, Poirot noted the watchman's lantern wavering at the entrance. A sense of unease seemed to settle over the estate, as though the house itself had secrets it would not yield easily. They were shown inside by a solemn butler, who spoke in hushed tones. Sir Alistair awaits you in the study, Monsieur Poirot. He is troubled. The study was lined with oak and filled with the scent of tobacco. Sir Alistair Wemberly rose from his chair, a tall man of weathered face and silver hair. His eyes, however, betrayed a restless agitation. Upon the desk before him lay the object that would soon become the heart of the affair. A scarf crimson as blood, its ends frayed, one corner marred by a dark and ominous stain. Poirot, Sir Alistair said, his voice low, I fear a tragedy has already occurred. Or, worse, that one is yet to come. He gestured to the scarf. This was found last night upon the landing outside my daughter Evelyn's chamber. At first, I dismissed it as a trifle. But then, this morning, the maid discovered that Evelyn herself was missing. Poirot bent carefully over the scarf, his eyes narrowing to green slits. His fingers did not touch it, but hovered above, as though the very air around the fabric whispered to him. "A scarf," he murmured, but not one merely dropped. "Regard, Hastings, the tear here, precisely along the weave. And the stain, ah, that is no ordinary soil. No, this," he stopped, pursing his lips, "this is blood." Hastings gave a start. "You don't mean, good Lord, Poirot, do you think something has happened to the girl?" Poirot straightened. "I think, my friend, that the scarf is not an accident. It is a message." The household was summoned, one by one. Evelyn's governess, Miss Charlotte Harrow, pale and rigid, swore the young lady had been restless of late. A secret correspondence, perhaps. A lover unapproved by her father. The maid, trembling, insisted she had heard footsteps upon the stair after midnight, though when she peered out, all she saw was a shadow moving swiftly away. Poirot listened, nodding gravely, the points arranging themselves in the tidy compartments of his mind. Yet what troubled him most was Sir Alistair himself. The man concealed something, of that Poirot was certain. His fingers drummed nervously, his eyes strayed often to the fire. At length Poirot said, "Monsieur, your daughter, describe her character." Sir Alistair hesitated. "Evelyn is spirited, headstrong. She has a fondness for literature, Agatha Christie in particular. She adored the murder of Roger Ackroyd, and once claimed she could have solved death on the Nile before Poirot himself." A faint smile curved Poirot's lips. "Ah, she is a woman of imagination, then. Such women do not vanish quietly. Non, there is more." He picked up the scarf delicately with his handkerchief. "This object is not Evelyn's, is it?" The baronet's silence was telling. Poirot's eyes flashed. "Ah, so you recognize it. Whose is it?" Sir Alistair muttered. "It belongs to a guest. To Mr. Gerald Whitcomb. He has been staying here these past 3 weeks." "And where is this Monsieur Whitcomb?" Poirot asked sharply. "Gone," Sir Alistair whispered. "He left the house before dawn." The thunder outside rattled the windows as Poirot and Hastings exchanged a glance. Already, the contours of a sinister plot were forming. "Mon ami," Poirot said softly, "we must not delay. The girl is missing. The scarf is stained with blood, and the man to whom it belongs has vanished. It is, how do you say, the beginning of a very dark tapestry." He turned, his eyes bright, the little gray cells alight with the first sparks of certainty. "This scarf, it is the key. Mark my words, Hastings. Around it, the whole puzzle will turn, like the Orient Express, where each clue pointed to a greater web. Here too we stand at the threshold of a mystery most delicate. We must tread with caution." The chapter closed upon that note, as Poirot folded the crimson scarf into his handkerchief and declared, "We shall find Evelyn, alive or dead, but we shall find her." And outside, the rain whispered against the stone walls of Wemberly House, as though echoing his vow. Chapter 2. The Scarlet Suspect. The morning broke gray and sullen over Wemberly House. The rain had eased, yet a mist clung to the fields like a veil of secrecy. Hercule Poirot stood at the window of the guest chamber assigned to him, his mustaches immaculate, his gaze fixed upon the distant drive that led away from the estate. Somewhere along that road, Gerald Whitcomb had vanished into the fog of dawn. Somewhere beyond, perhaps, Evelyn Wemberly lay in peril. Hastings entered, adjusting his tie with the fumbling earnestness that so often irritated Poirot. "Dash it all, Poirot, I couldn't sleep a wink. The whole business is dash queer. The missing girl, that dreadful scarf, and this fellow Whitcomb disappearing like smoke. It doesn't add up." Poirot turned slowly. "It will add up, mon cher. Every crime, every puzzle, is a sum waiting to be balanced. The question is only whether the accountant," he tapped his temple, "has the patience to calculate. And I assure you, Poirot has that patience." Breakfast was a strained affair in the great dining hall. Sir Alistair sat stiff and pale, his coffee untouched. Beside him, Miss Harrow, the governess, attempted to sip her tea without betraying the tremor of her hand. The servants moved silently, their eyes avoiding the place where Evelyn ought to have sat. Poirot, ever observant, let his gaze wander across the table. Sir Alistair, he began gently, this Mr. Whitcomb, tell me of him. The baronet's jaw tightened. A distant connection through my late wife's family. He is of decent breeding, but not altogether reliable. He gambles, I am told. He came to stay while traveling through London. I thought little of it. The silence that followed was thick. Finally, Miss Harrow spoke in a thin voice. He courted her, Monsieur Poirot, against her father's wishes. Evelyn was young, impressionable. She believed herself in love. Hastings muttered, "Good Lord, so the fellow runs off with her." Poirot lifted a finger. "Patience, Hastings. It may be so, or it may be something darker." He leaned forward. "Sir Alistair, you objected to this attachment?" "I forbade it," Sir Alistair said bluntly. "Whitcomb is penniless, a fortune hunter. Evelyn deserves better." His hand clenched on the tablecloth. "But I never dreamed she would defy me so utterly." Poirot's eyes flickered toward the crimson scarf, now safely enclosed in a small box upon his person. "And yet, monsieur, it is not the defiance that troubles me. It is the stain upon the scarf. Blood, and not in some trifling quantity. Tell me, was Whitcomb injured? Did he quarrel last night?" Miss Harrow shook her head. "Not that I know of. Evelyn retired early. I saw her by candlelight, reading. She had Murder on the Orient Express open upon her lap, though her eyes seemed far away. It was the last time I saw her." Poirot rose. "Then, mademoiselle, we must retrace her steps." They began with Evelyn's chamber. The room bore the traces of her presence. A mirror with brushes laid neatly upon it, a novel left open on the bed, the murder at the vicarage by Miss Marple's chronicler, and a vase of fresh roses faintly wilting in the morning air. Yet upon closer inspection, Poirot found disorder, barely perceptible to Hastings, but clear to the Belgian's meticulous eye. "The rug," he said softly. "It is askew by several inches. And here, the candlestick moved from its usual place. And behold, the window latch is undone." Hastings bent down. "By Jove, Poirot, you mean someone came through the window?" Poirot touched the sill with his gloved fingers. "No, the dew is undisturbed. But someone wished to create the impression of such an entry. A deception, mon ami. Always beware of the scene that tells its tale too neatly." He opened the wardrobe. Dresses hung in a row of pastel shades, dainty and elegant. Yet one hanger was empty, its shape marked clearly upon the dust of the wood. Evelyn took clothing with her, Poirot observed. She did not vanish in her nightdress. This was a planned departure, or a forced one, in haste but not without preparation. Then she went willingly with Whitcomb. Hastings exclaimed. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, but the scarf, bloodied, torn, does not fit such an elopement. Non, Hastings, something violent intruded upon this romance." The day stretched into inquiries. Poirot interviewed the household, the butler, whose memory was precise to the minute, the maid, whose fear made her words tremble, the cook, who swore she had seen Whitcomb slip out of the library late at night. Each account added brushstrokes to the portrait of suspicion. By afternoon, Poirot requested Sir Alistair gather the staff in the drawing-room. He stood before them, immaculate as ever, his hands clasped. "Mesdames et messieurs, you are troubled by the disappearance of Mademoiselle Evelyn. You wonder if she is safe, if she has fled with her suitor. But I tell you this, she did not leave without struggle. The scarf, the scarf is proof. Blood does not lie." A murmur rippled through the room. Miss Harrow gasped softly, her hand flying in her mouth. Sir Alistair's face darkened. Are you suggesting Wickham harmed her? Poirot inclined his head. I suggest only this. We must find him. At once. That evening, Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard arrived, summoned by Sir Alistair in desperation. Japp was a sturdy man, practical to the bone, who regarded Poirot's delicacy with a mixture of admiration and impatience. Well, here we are again, Poirot. Japp grunted. Another missing girl, another young chap in the wind. Looks like a straightforward elopement to me. The bloodstain, maybe a cut finger. Poirot's mustaches bristled. Mon cher Japp, you are too quick as always. A cut finger? Regardez. The size of the stain. Non, this is more grave. And Wickham, this man of debts and vanities, he is too convenient as the villain. When a crime appears too simple, it is usually not simple at all. Japp snorted. You, in your little gray cells. Very well, I'll put out a description. But mark me, Poirot, 9 times out of 10, it's the fellow you suspect from the start. Poirot bowed slightly. Perhaps, my friend, but it is the 10th time that interests me. As night fell, Poirot sat alone in the study, the crimson scarf spread before him under lamplight. He studied the weave, the torn edge, the irregularity of the stain. His mind drifted through memories of past puzzles. The cryptic note in peril at End House, the delicate deception of the ABC murders, the cruel cunning of Sad Cyprus. Always, it was the small detail that betrayed the truth. And then he saw it. Leaning closer, he examined the frayed threads. They bore not one, but 2 distinct tensions, one from tearing, another from deliberate cutting. The scarf had been tampered with. Poirot sat back, his eyes gleaming. Alors, we have not merely the disappearance of a girl and the flight of a lover. We have the hand of another, an enemy unseen. The fire crackled in the hearth. Hastings, drowsing in the corner, stirred. What is it, Poirot? Poirot smiled thinly. It is the difference, mon ami, between the truth and the story told to us. Wickham may be guilty of many things, but of this crime, I'm not yet convinced. He folded the scarf once more and whispered to himself, Tomorrow, the hunt begins, and the crimson scarf, it will betray its owner. The chapter closed in silence, with Poirot's shadow cast long upon the wall, his figure still and watchful. Outside, the mist pressed against the windows, as if the very air conspired to conceal Evelyn Wemberly's fate. Chapter 3. The Trail of Crimson Lies. The following morning dawned sharper, brighter, as though the sky itself had resolved to pierce through the lingering haze of uncertainty. Yet the clarity of the day did little to dispel the fog that had settled over Wemberly House. Every face in the household seemed drawn, eyes flickering nervously toward every shadow, every passing sound. It was as though the house itself listened, waiting for news of Evelyn Wemberly or of her ruin. Hercule Poirot sat in the library, immaculate as ever, poring over the scarf once more. Hastings watched from a nearby chair, restless, tapping his fingers against the arm. Poirot, he burst out at last. We've pored over that scarf a dozen times. Isn't it time we set out and followed Wickham's trail? Japp's men are combing the countryside already. Poirot raised a finger delicately. Patience, mon cher. The Englishman hunts with hounds, yes, but Poirot, he hunts with the mind. Regard this scarf again. It is not only the blood that speaks. Look closer. Hastings leaned forward. Looks like wool, torn at the edge. What of it? Ah, Hastings, you see, and yet you do not observe. Poirot smoothed the edge with his gloved hand. The tear is not fresh. It has been worn, frayed before last night. This scarf was not ruined in a struggle. It was already damaged, and then it was, how do you say, repurposed, used as a prop to suggest violence. Hastings stared. You mean the blood was planted? To mislead us. Poirot's mustaches twitched with satisfaction. Precisement. The blood may be real, yes, but it is not Evelyn's, I suspect. Someone wishes us to believe in a story. And when someone tells a story, Hastings, one must always ask, who benefits? By mid-morning, Inspector Japp returned with news. He entered the study briskly, raincoat still damp, and tossed his bowler hat onto a chair. "We've traced Whitcomb's departure," he announced. He took the 5 a.m. train from the local station. Witnesses saw him, nervous and hurrying. Destination, Portsmouth. Sir Alistair, who had been pacing near the fireplace, turned sharply. Portsmouth? Then he means to flee the country. Japp grunted. Looks that way. We'll have men waiting at the docks. Poirot shook his head. Non, mon ami, do not waste your men. Whitcomb is but a shadow. He runs, yes, but not necessarily because he is guilty. Sometimes a man flees because he fears to be accused, not because he is the criminal. Japp gave him a skeptical glance. You got a soft spot for this chap, Poirot? Or your little gray cells leading you somewhere else? Poirot inclined his head. To the truth, as always. And the truth is not yet so simple. That afternoon, Poirot requested to examine Evelyn's belongings more closely. Miss Harrow guided him back to the young woman's chamber, where sunlight now streamed across the bed, illuminating the novel left open, Death in the Clouds. Poirot paused, touching the page lightly. She was reading of murder committed in the skies, he murmured. How curious that she should vanish under the roof of her own house. He moved methodically, opening drawers, studying the arrangement of trinkets and letters. At last, in the writing desk, he found a bundle of envelopes bound by ribbon. Letters, some addressed in a bold, masculine hand. Gerald Whitcomb's. Hastings leaned over eagerly. That's it, Poirot. Love letters. Proof of their affair. But Poirot's eyes had narrowed. Love, yes. But more. Much more. See here, Hastings. He unfolded one, reading aloud in a low tone. Evelyn, my dearest, trust me, though your father rails against me. Soon we shall be free of his tyranny. There are those who would aid us, if only you have courage. Meet me by the oak at midnight. Our happiness depends upon it. Hastings frowned. Sounds straightforward enough. Poirot shook his head. Non, you see only the surface. The words are theatrical, too polished. This is no impassioned young lover. This is a man performing. And note, the mention of those who would aid us. Who are these mysterious allies? Whitcomb, I think, is a pawn upon the chessboard, not the king. Miss Harrow's face had grown pale as ivory. Do you mean Evelyn was ensnared? That others are involved? Poirot bowed his head. That, mademoiselle, is what we must discover. Later, as twilight gathered, Poirot asked to see the grounds. Sir Alistair, though reluctant, led him and Hastings down the sweeping lawns toward the ancient oak tree that loomed at the edge of the estate. Its branches were vast, gnarled, and heavy with autumn leaves. This is where the letter bade her come, Poirot said softly, gazing at the shadows beneath. The trysting place of romance, and perhaps of betrayal. He knelt suddenly, his sharp eyes catching a faint impression in the earth. A footprint, small, feminine, and beside it, another, heavier, deeper, the sole marked with a peculiar crosshatch pattern. Poirot traced it with his cane. Hastings, note this well. Not Whitcomb's boot. His had smooth leather soles. I observed upon our introduction. This belongs to another man. Sir Alistair shifted uneasily. Another man? But who? Poirot straightened, his gaze cutting across the misty lawn. That, Sir Alistair, is the trail of crimson lies. Whitcomb is not the only suspect. There is another, one who stalks the same ground, unseen, leaving only the faintest trace. That evening, Poirot convened once more in the study with Sir Alistair, Japp, and Hastings. He laid the scarf, the letters, and a sketch of the footprints before them like evidence at a trial. "Messrs," he declared, "we have been told a story. That Evelyn eloped with Wickham, leaving behind a bloodied scarf. But already we see the cracks. The scarf is older, prepared. The letters are contrived, theatrical. The footprints reveal another man present. Therefore, what we have been given is not truth, but a tale designed to mislead." Sir Alistair's voice trembled with suppressed fury. "But why? Why would anyone seek to harm my daughter?" Poirot's gaze softened. "Perhaps for love, perhaps for money, perhaps for vengeance. The motives of mankind, monsieur, are always the same. But which one it is, that is the riddle we must untangle." Japp sighed, running a hand through his hair. "So you're saying Wickham may not be the villain after all?" Poirot spread his hands. "He is guilty of foolishness, of deception perhaps. But the true villain? Non, Japp. The true villain still walks free." That night, when the house had gone quiet, Poirot lingered awake, pacing softly in the guest chamber. Hastings, half asleep, mumbled, "Can't it wait until morning, old chap?" Poirot stopped by the window, looking out over the misty grounds, the oak tree's shadow etched against the moonlit sky. "No, Hastings. Somewhere tonight, Evelyn Wemberly is still hidden, alive, I pray. And until we strip away each lie, each false trail, we shall not find her. The scarf has given us our first lesson. Beware of what is shown. The truth, Hastings, lies beneath." He closed the shutters, and with a sigh, murmured in French, "La vérité est si cache, mais elle s'enfuit jamais." The truth, it hides, but it never runs away. And in the silence that followed, the crimson scarf seemed to burn brighter in his mind, a beacon of both danger and revelation. Chapter 4. The Crimson Revelation. The storm that had threatened all day broke just after midnight. Rain lashed against the high windows of Wemberly House. The wind rattled the shutters, and thunder cracked like artillery over the countryside. The household, restless and fearful, lay in uneasy silence. But in Poirot's chamber, a light still glowed. Hercule Poirot sat upright in a velvet chair, the crimson scarf laid before him on a small table. Hastings, wrapped in a dressing gown, hovered near the fire, uneasy. "Really, Poirot," he muttered, "must you sit up like this staring at that wretched rag? We've been over it 100 times." Poirot's gaze never wavered. And yet, Hastings, the scarf does not tire of speaking. It whispers its truth if one is willing to listen. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "This stain, do you notice? The edges are darker than the center. It was not spilled in a struggle. It was poured. The blood was placed upon it." Hastings gave a shudder. "Good Lord. Mon ami, do not recoil. Think instead. Someone desired us to believe in violence. But where there is performance, there is always an audience, and always the director behind the curtain." The following morning, Inspector Japp returned, bedraggled from the storm, with grim tidings. "Whitcomb's been found," he announced without ceremony. "Portsmouth, lodging house. He claims he left Evelyn behind because she refused to come with him. Says he ran because he feared your suspicions, Poirot." Sir Alistair, who had been pacing the hall like a restless lion, turned on Japp. "Lies. He lured her away. He destroyed my daughter's honor." But Poirot raised a hand. "Calm yourself, monsieur. Wickham may be a scoundrel, but scoundrels are not always murderers. If he refused her, then where did Evelyn go?" Japp grumbled. "We'll hold him in custody until we sort it out. But if you ask me, he's still the likeliest villain." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And if I asked Poirot, mon cher, he would say attention. Look beyond the obvious. The man who flees is convenient to blame. But the man who arranges the scene? That is another matter. Poirot demanded to question Whitcomb himself, and so the following day they traveled to Portsmouth. The young man, Gerald Whitcomb, sat pale and unshaven in a dingy interrogation room, his hands trembling as he twisted his hat. "I swear it, Monsieur Poirot," he cried. "I loved Evelyn, yes, but I did not harm her. She changed her mind at the last, said she could not betray her father. I begged her, but she wept and fled from me. That was the last I saw of her." Poirot studied him with a gaze as sharp as a blade. "And the scarf, monsieur? It was yours, was it not?" Whitcomb flushed. Yes, it was mine. I left it at the house. But I swear I never stained it with blood." Jap growled, "Convenient story." But Poirot lifted a hand. "Perhaps too convenient. Whitcomb, these letters, did you write them?" The young man blinked in confusion as Poirot placed the bundle on the table. He scanned one, then another. At last he shook his head violently. "No, these are not mine. The hand resembles, yes, but the words, too floored, too staged. I wrote Evelyn, yes, but not these." Poirot leaned back, satisfaction glowing in his eyes. "Just so. At last, we have the proof. These letters were forged." Back at Wemberly House, Poirot gathered Hastings, Jap, and Sir Alistair in the library. Rain drummed steadily against the windows as he laid out the evidence once more. The scarf, the footprints, the letters. "Messrs," he said, "we stand upon the threshold. Whitcomb is no angel, but he is not the monster we seek. These letters, false. This scarf, staged. And the footprints by the oak, those of another. Who, then, had the most to gain by Evelyn's disappearance?" Sir Alistair's face grew taut. "You cannot mean someone in this house." Poirot's eyes softened. "But yes, monsieur. Always the circle is smaller than we think. Consider Evelyn's fortune, her inheritance, what power it grants. And consider, too, those in her orbit, close enough to mislead." Miss Harrow, the governess, pale as a wraith, stood by the door. Her lips parted as though to protest, but no words came. Poirot turned his gaze to her gently. "Mademoiselle, you have been anxious, distraught. Yet you knew more than you confessed. The night of Evelyn's disappearance, you saw a shadow, did you not? Tell us again." Her eyes fluttered shut. I saw a man descending the stair. Not Whitcomb. Taller, broader. I thought, if I spoke, it would only bring ruin." Poirot inclined his head. "And ruin for whom, mademoiselle?" Her silence was damning. That night, Poirot prowled the corridors alone. He paused outside Sir Alistair's study, where lamplight spilled beneath the door. Inside, he heard the baronet's voice, low, angry, urgent, speaking to someone unseen. Poirot leaned close. "You promised me," Sir Alistair hissed. "You said she would obey, that she would see sense. Now she is gone, and I am left to bear the scandal." A softer voice, trembling, replied, "I only did what you asked. I thought it best." Poirot withdrew before he could hear more. His mind was alight. Pieces fell into place. The forged letters, the staged scarf, the governess's silence. A revelation loomed, terrible and unmistakable. The next morning, Poirot called them all together in the grand drawing room. Sir Alistair, Miss Harrow, Jap, Hastings. The scarf lay upon the table like an accusation. Poirot stood, hands clasped, eyes glittering with certainty. "Mesdames et messieurs, the time has come. The puzzle of the crimson scarf is no longer a puzzle. I know now who forged the letters, who placed the blood, who arranged Evelyn's disappearance." Hastings gasped. "You mean you've solved it, Poirot?" Poirot inclined his head. "Oui, mon ami. And the revelation will shock us all." His voice lowered, heavy with finality. The true enemy was not Gerald Whitcomb. It was one within these very walls. One who sought to control Evelyn, to bind her will, and when she resisted, to make her vanish. He turned, his gaze sharp as steel. The crimson scarf points not outward but inward. The lies, the staging, the fear, it all leads to you. He extended his finger, the silence unbearable. To you, Sir Alistair Wemberly. Sir Alistair's face drained of all color. The thunder outside seemed to echo Poirot's words. Miss Harrow let out a strangled cry. Japp muttered a curse under his breath. Hastings staggered back in disbelief. Poirot's voice rang clear. You staged it all. The scarf, the forged letters, the false trail of Wickham. Because you could not bear your daughter's defiance. You would rather see her vanish than see her wed against your will. Sir Alistair's fists clenched. You dare accuse me. But Poirot silenced him with a raised hand. "Na, monsieur, it is not I who accuse you. It is the evidence. The scarf was from Wickham, yes, but the blood? From the pheasant you hunted yesterday morning. The letters? Forged by a hand that trembled with authority. Yours. And the footprint beneath the oak? It matches the boots in your closet with a crosshatched sole." The room fell into stunned silence. Poirot's voice softened, yet cut deeper than any blade. You would rather destroy than lose control. But control, monsieur, is not love. Evelyn saw through you, and she resisted. That is why she vanished. And now we must find her before it is too late. The storm raged on outside, but within the drawing room, another storm had broken. Sir Alistair trembled, his composure shattered. Japp stepped forward, eyes hard. "By God, Poirot, if you're right, we'll drag the truth from him." Poirot closed his eyes for a moment, as if weary. "The truth, Inspector, is already plain. All that remains is to uncover where Sir Alistair has hidden Evelyn. And that we shall do." And with those words, the crimson scarf lay between them all, no longer a mystery, but a weapon of lies, of control, of revelation. Chapter 5. The Final Knot of the Crimson Scarf. The drawing room of Wemberly House lay heavy in silence, as though the house itself were listening. The crimson scarf rested upon the polished oak table, the centerpiece of a drama nearing its climax. Outside, the storm raged on, wind howling like a chorus of ghosts, lightning clawing across the sky. Sir Alistair Wemberly, baronet, patriarch, and now accused, stood rigid, his features locked in pale defiance. But his eyes betrayed him. They flickered with fear. Inspector Japp folded his arms. "So, you'd have us believe you forged the letters, spilled the blood, staged the scarf, all to blame the young lover? That's quite the story." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Mais non, mon ami. It is not a story. It is the truth. And the truth, it must be faced." Japp turned sharply towards Sir Alistair. "Well, sir, do you deny it?" Sir Alistair's lips parted, but no sound came. His hand trembled where it rested upon the chair, until at last his voice, low and harsh, broke the silence. "I did what I had to do. Evelyn was mine, my daughter, my flesh and blood. I would not see her squander herself on a penniless clerk. She was bound to me, to the Wemberly name. If she would not obey, then she would disappear. Better no daughter at all than disgrace." Miss Harrow gave a strangled sob. Hastings exclaimed, "Good heavens!" and Japp swore under his breath. But Poirot stepped forward, his voice soft yet sharper than any blade. "Non, monsieur, not better, never better. For in seeking to bind her, you destroyed her trust. You would rather extinguish her freedom than accept her choice. That, Sir Alistair, is not love. It is tyranny." Poirot lifted the scarf delicately between thumb and forefinger. "This scarf was the stage prop of your illusion. Blood from a pheasant. See here, the darker rim, the absence of clotting. Too perfect, too theatrical. The forged letters, written by your own hand. Your style betrayed you. The footprints beneath the oak, your boots, monsieur, and Miss Harrow's shadowy witness? She saw you descending the stair the night Evelyn vanished. Sir Alistair's composure cracked. "Enough," he roared. "You think you know everything, little man, but where is your proof of her fate? Where is Evelyn?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Ah, the final knot. You're clever, monsieur, but Poirot is cleverer still. Evelyn is not dead. She was never dead. You hit her." Gasps erupted around the room. Miss Harrow pressed a trembling hand to her lips. "Not dead?" Poirot inclined his head. "No, mademoiselle. A man like Sir Alistair values legacy too much to stain it with murder. He would confine, not kill. He would silence, not bury. And where does one confine, if not in the old east wing of this very house? The wing declared unfit, abandoned, locked away. There, Evelyn waits." Japp straightened. "By thunder, Poirot, if you're right." He rushed from the room with 2 constables in tow. Footsteps pounded on the stair. Doors slammed. Shouts echoed through the corridor. Moments later, a cry rang out. Then, footsteps rapid, urgent. And into the drawing room, pale as snow yet alive, Evelyn Wemberly was led. The room erupted in shock. Evelyn's eyes, wide and haunted, darted from face to face until they settled upon Poirot. "You found me," she whispered. Poirot bowed gently. "Mademoiselle, one does not give up when life is at stake. It is the duty of Hercule Poirot to restore what has been stolen." She turned then to her father, her voice trembling but resolute. "Why, Papa? Why would you do this to me?" Sir Alistair's face crumpled. For the first time, his proud, imperious mask fell away, revealing not power but despair. "Because I loved you too much to lose you," he murmured. Evelyn's voice hardened. "No, you loved yourself too much to let me go." Japp stepped forward. "Sir Alistair Wemberly, you are under arrest for unlawful imprisonment, forgery, and obstruction of justice." His words rang like iron against stone. Poirot replaced the scarf upon the table, folding it neatly as though it were sacred. He turned to Hastings, who had been struck dumb through it all. "You see, mon ami, it is always the psychology. A murderer destroys, but a father such as this, he controls. And the scarf, so dramatic, so false, it was the key. It shouted of deception. It revealed the truth." Hastings let out a long breath. "I'll say, Poirot, you've done it again. But, good Lord, to think Sir Alistair himself the culprit." Poirot's eyes softened. "It is ever thus, Hastings. The serpent hides closest to the heart. That is the tragedy." Later, when Evelyn had been tended to and the police departed, Poirot stood alone in the library. The storm outside was passing now, leaving only the soft patter of rain and the first glimmer of dawn. He gazed once more at the crimson scarf. To most, it was nothing, a stained scrap of silk. To Poirot, it had been a riddle, a whisper of falsehood, a thread that led through the labyrinth. He smiled faintly, adjusting his mustache. The puzzle is complete. The knot is tied. Justice, she is satisfied. And so ended the affair of the crimson scarf, as curious and tragic as any that ever crossed the path of Hercule Poirot. It joined the ranks of mysteries solved. The murder of Roger Ackroyd, the mystery of the blue train, the mysterious affair at Styles. And though each case differed, one truth remained. The little gray cells never failed. As Hastings later reflected, it was Poirot who saw what no one else did. The false trail, the stage prop, the lie dressed as truth. And in seeing, he saved a life. And so, my friends, the riddle of the puzzle of the crimson scarf was unraveled. A tale not only of mystery and deception, but of control, pride, and the cost of love twisted into possession. Hercule Poirot once again proved that no illusion, however cleverly staged, can escape the sharp eyes of his little gray cells. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of Agatha Christie's most brilliant detective, be sure to subscribe for more mysteries, more puzzles, and more stories where the truth waits, hidden until the moment Poirot reveals it. Until next time, keep your eyes sharp and trust no clue too easily.